There was no better time for reality shows than in the early 2000s. I swear, we saw some of the best, some of the worst, and some of the most completely fake. Allegedly. As we continue to explore more reality shows of all kinds here on the channel, I wanted to take a look at one show in particular right now that wanted to push the limits of what a reality competition show could be. A show that would put contestants face to face with their biggest fears and ask them to conquer them for a chance at winning $50,000. Sounds pretty epic, right? So yeah, today we're gonna take a look at the show that makes your greatest fears become a reality, Fear Factor. I grew up watching this show in terror, thinking that if I was ever on it, that there would be no way I can ever deal with calmly chilling with a vat of snakes, or having a tarantula walk all over me, or be covered in bees. And luckily, I didn't have to do any of that. The contestants will, and I get to cringe in joy of seeing them try and complete whatever insane task is thrown their way. There was also plenty of controversies when it came to certain things done in the show, like some incredibly dangerous and almost fatal stunts and insects being eaten alive. There's a lot of disgusting, messed up, and dangerous moments showcased in this series, and much like the warning that plays at the start of the episodes, these stunts are supervised by trained professionals, and they should not be attempted by anyone, anywhere, anytime. Also, for the sake of your sanity watching this, I will make sure that the footage shown doesn't cross any over-the-top line so we can enjoy talking about this show without losing our lunch. With that being said, welcome to Fear Factor. At the time, in the year 2000, Survivor became the biggest thing on television. It changed the game for what a reality show could be and how competitions could be handled. But you don't need me to tell you that now. I made a 12-hour video all about Survivor, but I bring this up as so many things have stemmed from the popularity of Survivor. Every network was looking for a solution to find something that could be their own Survivor to an extent. But mainly, with the existence of Survivor, it became a green light to try and push the boundaries of what you could do on TV that people would want to tune into to see for themselves through curiosity, word of mouth, and being a part of some water cooler conversations. In 2001, NBC fully had their idea come to fruition, something that would take the reality competitive style and bring it to new heights, something that would be so hard to watch at some points, but you couldn't take your eyes off of because you weren't the one having to do what was on the show. The main purpose was to stress out the viewers watching and stress out the contestants. All it needed was a host, and that was found in Joe Rogan. At the time, Joe had recently wrapped up playing the role of Joe Gorelli on the NBC sitcom News Radio, and being in the NBC family already, the connection was pretty much made. Joe's popularity was on the rise in general thanks to his acting career, his stand-up career, and his commentator role for the UFC. Comedy at the end of the 90s for Joe was a major focus though, getting a 3-comedy album deal, and was looking for more material for his sets as time went on. So come 2001, when he was offered to be the host of NBC's crazy idea for Fear Factor, he thought it could be a cool way to get some fun material if he took the gig. At first, he was hesitant, not wanting to do it, thinking that the concept wouldn't work on TV, and the censors would not let it air for what the show would contain. Eventually, he did say yes, thinking it would be cancelled after a few episodes, but at least he can still get some bits for his stand-up from it after being convinced to just go for it. Come June 11th, 2001, Fear Factor would officially premiere on NBC, and I don't think people were ready for what they were in for. Imagine a world where your greatest fears become reality. Welcome to Fear Factor. Each show, 6 contestants from around the country battle each other in 3 extreme stunts. These stunts are designed to challenge the contestants both physically and mentally. If the contestant is too afraid to complete a stunt, they're eliminated. If they fail a stunt, they're eliminated. But if they succeed, they will be one step closer to the grand prize, $50,000. Yeah, the intro to the show really explains it all pretty well. Now, much like Survivor's story of being adapted and changed a bit to become what it is for the US, Fear Factor was a bit of the same, adapting the concept from the Dutch show named Now or Neverland. It was the same thing, basically, maybe not as in-your-face and as extreme as Fear Factor would become, but if you give it a watch, you can see the base idea is there. Also, like Survivor, Fear Factor would become a syndicated show all over the world with about 40 different versions of it. The show was separated into 3 segmented stunts, where where the first would be all about testing your physical strength, and it would be judged on a number of things to see if you'd make it to the next round, or be eliminated from the game if you fail to complete the stunt or come in last place. From being dragged by a horse, to jumping between buildings, to getting attacked by a dog, these could get pretty intense, but would only be the beginning in comparison of what else is to come in the following rounds of stunts. For the second stunt, the goal was to challenge your mental strength, really putting the fear in Fear Factor. Here is where we get to the gross and messed up part of the episodes, as they would focus on stuff like eating bugs, or whatever messed up blended together smoothie of horrors you'd have to drink, or whatever they felt like having the contestants try and stomach. If it wasn't that, it could be something else that involves animals, like becoming surrounded by animals or insects or arachnids to an insane degree, usually being the fears of the contestants and many at home watching. At the very least, you were just uncomfortable with the thought of them being all over and around you if you didn't have an initial fear of whatever it was. And for these two types of stunts, you just had to not vomit or make it through the time limit to pass, or you'd be eliminated. The other type of challenge for the second stunt could have you trying to retrieve something or transfer something, with the hard part being what you had to go through to complete the task, with gross liquids or live animals, and this at most times would have them using their mouths to get whatever the item was. Sometimes they would switch it up and this will be more of a pain tolerance challenge, or doing something embarrassing for public humiliation, just something that would demean you as a human being, from the lightest to the most extreme definition of that. Joe even sometimes participated in stunts here to help encourage the players to do it, but even he was accidentally hurt when he wasn't even doing the stunt, getting hit with some tear gas at one point that blew his direction thanks to the wind. This middle part of the show would definitely be the biggest draw to the show, as it always offered something crazy that you'd never want to do. After this, we'd get into the final stunt of the episode, where it would be some ridiculous actual stunt straight out of a movie, where the show can bring in the use of vehicles, or have you on high heights or high beams, or in water tanks or tight spaces, and an ongoing list of ridiculous concepts that whoever has the best overall performance doing the challenge wins the whole competition. Joe would tell you, evidently, fear is not a factor for you, and then you get $50,000. And like I said, there would be variations to each episode aside from stunts 1 and 3 changing up, with stunt 2 having the most possibilities to be the hardest to watch and even harder to participate in. There were special versions of the show as well, like episodes that would feature a 4th stunt added in and could be tied to holiday related episodes or even family Fear Factor, and it's nothing like Family Double Dare. There were so many other formats that the show would play with, like having celebrities play, or the all gross out shows, which would have all the stunts be based on the second stunt format, and there was no saving you from the non-stop onslaught of disgusting found there. Sometimes the show would do multiple part episodes or have 2-hour-long specials that would feature more stunts in total with a larger prize at the end, and can feature more competitors than usual. These could be champions of previous episodes competing, reality stars from other shows, yes, like Survivor, coming onto this show to now compete, couples working together facing off against other couples for a massive $1 million prize, and it would be a nice change of pace when the show would focus on doing something different like that. They had home invasion segments where they would pull up to people's houses and challenge them to complete a stunt to win a smaller sum of money. There was also a sleep deprivation version that had the contestants stay up for 48 hours during the time of doing the stunts and in between them, and many other tweaks throughout the series. But even with all of these changes to the format, especially in the back half of the seasons, there may have just been too many struggles to keep the show going. The show was a massive hit on the network, only growing in ratings and viewership during its first few seasons. In total, for its original 6 seasons on NBC from 2001 to 2006, the show was extremely profitable, taking in $600 million at the time in revenue. But this type of success with something as stress-inducing, gross, and even defined as repugnant, there were bound to be some downsides and burnout from watching the show. Around the time season 4 came out, there was a noticeable decline in viewership, and that continued to decrease from there for the remainder of the series, as other shows were fighting for attention and were getting it. After a while, seeing these terrifying and awful things wore out the audience. It just became too much at a certain point. The show did try to elevate the stunts and challenges to more extreme degrees to keep the attention on them, but a lot of it just didn't work. Joe himself has been vocal over time and through his podcast about his experience and thoughts on many different aspects of the show. The boring aspect was one of them, noticing that the stunts felt the same with small variations, or the eating challenges would consist of the same foods. The shock value wasn't as, well, shocking. But when some of the stunts would be more over the top, Joe felt that sooner or later someone is going to get hurt, or even worse, die. Joe knew that the stunt crew were some of the best in the business at the time setting things up, but would go on to claim that they were also attempting and doing sketchy things when contemplating and making some of these work, and when they'd come to life, they would be quite ridiculous in actuality. Luckily, the show itself didn't lead to any deaths. There seemed to be many times where one one wrong move or sporadic decision could have easily led to that, even having a few close calls on the show itself, but the contestants of the show survived throughout all 6 seasons. Sadly, there were some deaths related to the property of Fear Factor in general. In 2005, a 22-year-old Thai pop star suffered and eventually passed away from brain injuries at a special Fear Factor event in Bangkok. The accident was caused thanks to a crane operator who wasn't doing the operating part safely. Just like that YouTuber that one time. Throughout the 2000s and early 2010s, there were a lot of impressionable people who wouldn't heed the warning before shows like this or Jackass and still attempt to do stunts themselves, whether for fun with friends or for the internet's enjoyment of others being reckless. Now, the argument around this became blaming the shows or blaming the individuals getting hurt from copying or making up their own stunts. A lot of injuries or deaths would happen throughout the time of those shows first hitting the air and now. On top of this, the show faced its fair share of controversies. A big point that the show was hit for was the eating of live bugs for entertainment on the show, with the American Humane Association not being too happy about this. Other shows did this as well, of course, but Fear Factor made it a point of the series. There were concern for the safety of animals when they would be used for challenges, whether it was a person trapped in a situation with them, or having to milk a goat with their mouths. Yeah, lawsuits even spawned from certain moments that happened in the show, with one so gross and messed up that a paralegal from Cleveland sued NBC for even airing this on television, as it made him so sick he got lightheaded, he vomited, he got dizzy enough to collide with his door frame getting hurt from this, and his blood pressure went through the roof. Regardless of how messed up it may have been, my guy, you don't have to watch it. All of this, plus the show's ratings heading south, would lead to it getting cancelled, as the final season would air throughout the summer of 2006, and that was it for Fear Factor, at least at the moment. While Joe already had many issues regarding the show, the passing of time had people potentially seeing interest in the show returning, as the views on reruns were doing pretty good. So what the heck, NBC decided to give it another go on one of their other owned networks, Chiller, as they roped Joe Rogan back into host. He really didn't want to do it at first, but ended up taking the job to have some extra cash flowing in so he can use it to help take care of his newborn children. It was ordered for 1 season and it began airing on December 11th, 2011, and continued on into 2012. It was more of the same that we saw in the original series, but in saying that, some of the challenges and stunts took things a bit too far, trying to make it even more insanely dangerous. There was even an episode so foul that it was not allowed to air on TV, and the 2 twin sisters who were in this episode tried to talk about what happened on a radio station, but were told by the producers of the show that this would break their confidentiality agreements and could lead to legal trouble. The viewership for this revival started out pretty strong, but quickly started to dwindle. From the jump, Joe knew something was off, and instantly started regretting taking the job. But with how successful his own ventures with the original series were, especially in helping him take care of his family at the time, he felt that he could hopefully get a little more from the series to replicate that once more. Joe did his job as host again, but wasn't having too much fun with it. In fact, he was quite disgusted with it all. Everything was taken up a notch for what the competitors had to do, and he was just kind of appalled. And that episode that was not allowed on TV really cemented the fate of this revival, officially killing the series from continuing. Once again, the show was off the air, and Fear Factor proved that even though they got away with a lot on the show, some things were just too much, and from there, you cross a line from entertainment into something not suitable for television. At some point, if you keep trying to top the shock value and danger aspect, you'll lose sight of the base spectacle of the program, becoming something no one wants to sit through. But with the brand of Fear Factor still being worth something, MTV would pick up the property 5 years later, but this time it would be hosted by Ludacris. And now the show would be toned down from how extreme it got, but still retain the base concept of it all. The tone felt different, and you could clearly tell that this version of the show didn't have the urgency to be like the original. MTV's reality mold was mainly, allegedly, fake and scripted nonsense that has its own charm, or it would be stuff like The Jersey Shore, so it needed to play it less extreme in order to feel like it fit in on the network. But despite this, the show ended up lasting for 2 seasons from 2017 to 2018, where the Fear Factor brand now lies as a tale from TV's past. Fear Factor has this mixed bag of a reputation attached to it. The first few seasons had a lot to them that made for something new and exciting on television, but with the safety concerns of the competitors, the animals, and how crazy they could make the stunts, it became more of a problem for the network, and at a certain point, the viewers couldn't take it anymore. Either that, or they just weren't as interested. As for Joe, the show ended up going on way longer than he expected. Like I said, he even came back to host the show for the one-off season it had when they attempted a comeback, but but in many ways, Fear Factor helped push his comedy career thanks to the notoriety of his name. His live shows would continue to grow thanks to the turnout of fans from Fear Factor going to see his sets. This also led his entertainment career further, as he would soon appear in guest roles on shows, and hosting-wise, he ended up taking over The Man Show, he hosted the blockbuster Hollywood Spectacular, and eventually his own radio show. And now, I think we all know how well he's doing today. Fear Factor tried to extend their brand as well at the height of the show's popularity, having stuff like a board game to play at home with family and friends, a cookbook in case you wanted that for some reason, a theme park attraction at both US Universal Studio locations, their own candy line, and of course, a video game for the Game Boy Advance for some reason. I own it, and it's not great, but hey, it exists if you want it, but I assure you, you don't. It was rated so bad that the plans to make a version of the game for consoles at the time were completely scrapped. But hey, it exists if you want it. Fear Factor was just one of those shows that perfectly encapsulates the true rise in the new age of reality television post-2000, where it pushed the limits of what can be shown on TV. You may love it, you may hate it, but it pushed forward the genre in ways that only looking back through the years can explain. It was super popular in its early years, and even though it began to decline from there, it surely left a long-lasting impression on those who watched it. In comparison to what's on the internet today, what we have instant access to watching, and what some creators will do for fun, it doesn't seem all that big of a deal anymore. But for its time, it sure was. With that being said, Scarred ended up scarring me worse when watching it. And before you ask, I've already talked about it in this video here. I have so many more videos on reality television shows, from the pure definition of it to the reality competitions, all coming sometime soon. But let me know in the comments how Fear Factor affected you if you gave the series a watch. I've been Jordan Fringe. Thanks so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Later.